Hey, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to keep the class a little shorter because it's a very busy day. I'm sure everybody's very busy getting ready for Yom Kippur, and I'm sure you're all eating all day. You know that just interesting tidbit. Today, there's actually a mitzvah to eat. They're going to say Judaism is full of mitzvahs to eat, right? Every holiday, it's a mitzvah to eat. Every Shabbos is a mitzvah to eat, right? We're the religion of food. That's true. But today, there's even a bigger mitzvah to eat. Today it actually says that whoever eats on the 9th of Tishrei, which is today, Erev Yom Kippur, right, is as if he is fasting on today. And there's a lot of different reasons behind it, a lot of different ideas. And one of the ideas that resonates with me, and I just want to talk about this for a couple minutes. If we have time, we'll go into the actual sefer, the book that we're learning. Maybe we'll learn one halacha, but just want to talk about this for a minute. What's the idea that eating is as if you're fasting, right? So I saw this beautiful idea once, and we've talked about this regarding Purim. We've talked about this regarding other ideas in Judaism. But when we eat today, and of course, a lot of it is the action that we do, but it's the thought that we have that really changes an action into something positive, right? And the mitzvah, of course, is just like any other time we have food to eat, is when you eat with a blessing, you eat kosher food, right? But the idea is like this. The idea is that today, Erev Yom Kippur, what we're showing is that when we're fasting on Yom Kippur, we're not fasting because the idea of a fast is we're nervous, right? We're not fasting because the idea of a fast is that like we have to it's like you can't eat before a day of judgment, something like that. The idea that we're fasting is because we realize that there's two entities that we have in our body. And I'm going to talk more about this on Yom Kippur itself, God willing, right? But there's two parts to us. We're made of two parts. One part is our neshama, our soul, and the other part is our goof, our body. And God infused both of these parts together, and He created humanity. That's humanity. Humans, right? Adam, Rishon, Adam, right? He created from afar min adama, from the dirt, from the earth from the earth, right? From the dust of the earth, right? From the sand of the earth, from the earth itself. And then He blew into man, nishmas chaim, and He blew into man, nishmas chaim, He blew into man the soul of life. So man is a combination of these two entities. And today and tomorrow, right? What we're showing is that these two entities are two ways that we could actually utilize both of them to a relationship with God. And if we focus on that, both of them have a way of relationship with God, then we could actually merge the two together and make the perfect, right, combination that is the perfect combination to have a relationship with God, and a perfect combination for us to live in harmony within ourselves, to be able to grow and to be the best that we can be with our relationship with God. All right. So tomorrow we fast. Tomorrow we act like angels, right? Tomorrow we're on, we don't wear leather. Leather represents, we spoke about this a different time on Yom Kippur. Leather represents our connection to the earth, right? Shoes, leather shoes represents our being grounded on the ground. We don't indulge ourselves in physical pleasure, right? All types of physical pleasure, right? Tomorrow is a day that we're not doing it because we're sad, like a Tisha B'Av, and what we're doing it is because we are showing that we could be all neshama, we could be all soul. We're like angels, right? We have the ability to connect, right, to a higher power. And we'll talk more about that idea and how to connect to that and what we're supposed to do with that, God willing, on Yom Kippur Day at around 11:30. So please join me. Right? Please join us. But that's the avodah of Yom Kippur. That's a service. That's what we're working on Yom Kippur. What are we working on today? Today, Erev Yom Kippur, what we're doing is we're living our lives, right? We're doing our thing. Yes, we're preparing, right? We're preparing for Yom Kippur. We're going to have to, our schedule's a little different. But There's a mitzvah to eat. Why is there a mitzvah to eat? Because what we're showing is that we realize that we could also get closer to God by, I don't want to use the word indulging ourselves, but by being involved in the physical world. Our physical body could also get closer to God. And one of the biggest ways that we indulge ourselves is through eating, throughout the day, right? We have other ways of indulging ourselves, right? But that's a specific time here, but eating and drinking is something that we do constantly throughout the day. So what we're showing is, and it's brought the Talmud, this is not some custom, right? The Talmud tells us, right? And it's from learning out from the verses. It's part of the oral law that there's a mitzvah of eating today, because what we're showing is that we are able to. Today is working on elevating our physical body by saying, "Good, look, God, you gave us a physical body. We could take this physical body and make spirituality out of it by itself." Of course, it's in a neshama, it's a soul that's allowing that to happen. But we could go ahead and we could elevate it. We take food and we eat kosher food, right? And we make a blessing and we enjoy it, but we're elevating it. We're elevating it, just like Kiddush on a Friday night. We could take cereal and milk in the morning and elevate it, make it something spiritual. We could take grapes and make it something special by making a blessing over it and eating it and enjoying it. Because by making a blessing, what we're recognizing is that God is the one that gave it to us. When we're making a blessing, we recognize that everything has a calculation. We have to constantly be thinking of God, even in our physical state. It's easy, or easier, to be spiritual on a spiritual level. Yom Kippur, right? I know a lot of people are going to have a very hard time this Yom Kippur, like last year, right? If you're unable to make it to shul, to synagogue, right? The comfort of your own home does not work so well with Yom Kippur. At least that's what I would think, right? You get more inspired by being in shul, by being with people, hearing the melodies, right? Not together, being part of it, being infused in it. But if you can make it, and that's what you feel you can't do, and I respect everybody with their decision, it's still a loftier day, right? It's still something that you have to connect to, and it's a spiritual day. And it's easier to connect. You're not eating. You're doing things that you don't usually do. You make sure you don't turn on your television, right, on Yom Kippur, because that's, it's a loftier day, or whatever it is. Each person on their level, do something, right, that's more spiritual. But to connect the spirituality through our physical part of us, that's harder. And that's what today's avoda is. There's a tradition, and it's brought down in the code of Jewish law, right, to have a meal before Yom Kippur. Not like Tisha B'Av, where we're sitting on the floor and we have our crust of bread and some ashes, because that's morning. It's supposed to be a festive meal before Yom Kippur, right? It's a festive meal. We're supposed to have good food, because today's a mini holiday. We didn't say Tachanan, we didn't say Avinu Malkeinu today by Shacharis. It's considered like a holiday. It's a holiday where we're connecting to our physical body and elevating it. And by today working on that, and tomorrow working on our spiritual soul, what we're doing is 2 days are two halves of a whole, two sides of a coin. Right? We're really combining the two, working on each one individually, and combining the two and saying, look, God, we want to have a relationship with you whatever way we can. Whatever way we can, we want to have a relationship with you. That's the connection between today, the 9th of Tishrei, and the 10th of Tishrei. And this really fits into our discussions that we always speak about on Wednesday morning for the time being, right? Our class, the pad, the mouth is mightier than the sword. Right, we're talking about different scenarios and different things. Now we're on a very interesting, section of different scenarios that it might happen. Are you allowed to say something? You're not allowed to say something. And there's a lot of very interesting cases. right? I don't think we're going to have time today to go through it. I apologize. We'll start again after Sukkot. I just want to get this point out. But the whole idea of guarding our tongue, right? The whole idea of making sure that we are more spiritual with our speaking is really this whole idea combined, right? If you notice that we have only one mouth. Last I checked, I think most people only have one mouth. Imagine if we had two. Oh my gosh, our ears will fall off. And we need two ears for one mouth. So imagine how many ears we'd need if we had two mouths. Right? Okay. Besides that point, right? We have one mouth. Right? We have two nostrils. We have two eyes. We have two ears. Right? We have two hands. But we have one mouth. Why do we have only one mouth? Right? Why do we only have one mouth? So the Vilna Gaon says, and I think we spoke about this like the first class almost a year ago, right? The Vilna Gaon says that the idea of one mouth is because speaking is a spiritual concept, right? As Onkelos, the great Onkelos, who is on the side of the Chumash, translated the Chumash into Aramaic, right? When he translates that God blew into man Nishmas Chaim, a soul of life, right? It says Ruach Mamala, a higher calling. And the Vilna Gaon translates that and says that means the Koach HaDibur, the ability to speak. The ability to speak is a spiritual entity. That's what it is. It's an ability to speak, to comprehend, and to create thought. And you can't touch it, right? You can't feel it, right? But it's there. But it creates. It's a spiritual entity. It is the spiritual component of a person. That's why man is called ruach, he has a spiritual connection. But at the same time, this spiritual ability comes out from a physical mouth, the mouth that eats what we digest our food, what we intake all our physical nourishments to be able to survive physically. So the mouth is something unbelievable. On one hand, it could create something that's spiritual, speaking, prayer, unfortunately, spiritual, hurting people also, something spiritual with our mouth, not physical, but spiritual. Emotional, we call it emotional, right? We call it psychological, but it's something that's on the level of spirituality. And on the other hand, it is the entity also that nourishes our physical body. Without our mouth, right? Yes, unfortunately, there's terrible things. People need intravenous and people need feeding tubes, right? But even the feeding tube goes through our system of our mouth. Our mouth is also the entity that to a certain degree is the greatest physical component of our body because we need it to be able to survive physically. One mouth. The same idea. Right? Man is considered a medaber, right? On the levels of in the spiritual realm, right? There's behema, there's animal, there's domem, there's rocks, and there's different levels, right? What is man called? The terminology that's used for man is medaber, one that speaks, one that has ability to form sentences and words. That's what man is called, because that utilizing for spirituality represents a spiritual component of man. But also man, right, the mouth, right, is what it creates our ability to live on a physical level, materialistic level, food. But how do we make that spiritual? How do we take the food and make it spiritual with the mouth? By making a blessing. How do we create the thing that's going into our mouth, the food, that it shouldn't just be something physical and connect us back to our physical realm and ground us in the materialistic world? We're eating, God made us, so we need nourishment, we need to eat, we need to put food in our mouth. But at the same time, that energy is a materialistic energy. And it feeds to our materialistic part of our body. We want to be spiritual. We want to connect to God. And there's always that balance. Right? And as I said, we'll talk more about that in Yom Kippur. But there's always that balance. So how do we make sure that when we feed ourselves to live physically, that we're not feeding our materialistic component of our body that will drag us to be more materialistic and further away from our spiritual component. It's the mouth, the same thing. The gift that God gave us, we go ahead and we make a blessing. We make a blessing over the food. What we're doing is it's sort of changing the molecules of the food. Now it's a spiritual entity. Because what you're doing is you're recognizing that you need the food to sustain yourself, but it's God that gives you the ability to do that. You're recognizing and you're acting upon it through your words, that you're saying, this is actually going to help me elevate myself spiritually, because if I don't eat, right, I can't do other mitzvot. I want to thank God for what he's given me. So one mouth, because it's the same thing like these two halves, right, of the 9th of Av and the 10th of Av, right, sort of working together. And I don't want to get into Purim, right? And we spoke about this around Purim. That's why Purim is Kippurim, right? Even though it's a rabbinic holiday, but it sort of has a combination of both together. It's not for now. But the 9th of Av, of eating today, is the other half of tomorrow, which is abstaining from physical pleasure. And we're abstaining from physical pleasure to elevate our spiritual soul. But we're showing that we recognize that it's not two separate things. It's not like we do our Judaism in synagogue, we do it on Yom Kippur, we do it on holidays, right? I have my spirituality, and then I have my physical life, materialistic life. No. What we're showing is that the two have to work together. The two are intertwined together. Because we can't separate the two, and if we do, one's gonna win over the other, and that's not what God wants either. Because that's where you have people that are in monasteries. That's not what God wants from us. We don't live in monasteries. So you have people that are abstaining from having children or from getting married. That's not what God wants. It's a mitzvah in the Torah, a direct mitzvah in the Torah to have children and to get married. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. So how do we combine those two? If we do that, that's material. That's indulging our materialistic, our physical needs. Two halves of a whole. Today we eat, we make blessings, right? And we're showing that we're able to take our physical, our materialistic enjoyments and say we're going to make something spiritual out of it. Tomorrow, we go ahead and we fast. To say we could connect to our spiritual soul. We need a rejuvenation every once in a while. Yes, we do have to reflect and take away ourselves from our materialistic, enjoyments for a little bit to reconnect. But it's not that we think that tomorrow is the only way to become spiritual. It's not like we think that the highest level of spirituality we could get to is through being absent from our materialistic pleasures. No. Today shows that we have a way of spiritualizing our materialistic. Yes, you need to separate a little bit sometimes to refocus and to make sure that we're doing things in the right way. But that's not necessarily the epitome of how we're supposed to live our lives. Day in and day out, we have to live our lives like today. And therefore, the Talmud says, right, that it learns it out from the Torah, right, from verses in the Torah, that the Torah switches the 9th of Tishrei and the 10th of Tishrei, combines the two, and I'm not going to go through the whole dialogue of the Talmud right now. The Talmud goes ahead and sort of mixes the 2 days together. Was it the 9th of Tishrei, the 10th of Tishrei, right? And the Talmud tells us, based on the oral law, that because when you eat on the 9th of Tishrei, today, in a proper way with blessings and kosher food and things like that, then it's as if you are fasting tomorrow. Because what you're showing is when you're fasting tomorrow, you are fasting because you realize that there is a spiritual connection and you realize that we have to connect to God, but we're not abstaining from the gifts that God has given us throughout the year. It's just a reboot. It's just an energy that we need sometimes, right, to sort of refocus us. So then when we eat today, it says if we fasted tomorrow, means to say that it's the same level. Because if we eat for the right reasons, right? If we eat with blessings, when we It's not the only eating. When we indulge ourselves with materialistic pleasures, but we do it for the right reason, then it's not considered like we're indulging ourselves. Because I know indulging ourselves seems like the bad word. We're living, but we're doing it in the proper way. We're doing it trying to build a relationship with God. And yes, one always has to keep on checking the balance. Am I doing it for my own pleasure? Or am I doing it for a relationship with God? Am I connecting with God during it? And we're not perfect. And it's a challenge every day, let's be honest. But that's why we need Yom Kippur to sort of balance us out. Say, hey, abstain, see where you're holding, see what you're doing. So you have to constantly have that balance. And that, as we said, all wraps into our mouth. Koach hadibur, the ability to speak. Man is called medaber because medaber, speaking, forming words, creating blessings, saying something positive about someone, praying, recognizing God's glory, right? Being able to say, wow, how great is God's creations. Saying the blessings over Kedushin, over marriage, to go ahead and sanctify the most physical pleasure that the humans could do. That is the epitome of humans, ability to go ahead and take that physical and elevate it through words, through a thought. And the words are not just the words because it's our thought. Our thoughts form our words. And you say, I wasn't thinking when I said that. You might not have been consciously thinking, but your brain is still thinking to be able to form those words. You have to be more consciously thinking about what you're saying, to be more aware of yourself. So, we're going to keep this short, and we're going to end with this. And thank you for joining me. I know it's a busy day today, but just something to reflect on as we start. Starting this day, right? Go ahead, enjoy yourself. Have a nice breakfast. I remember some people suck candies all day, right? That's sort of because you can't eat all day, right? I mean, some people could, right? But they suck candies, have a little snack, grapes or whatever things to eat, which is grapes are also good for a fast, right? But remember when you're doing it, a lot of times we do certain actions and we forget why we're doing it, or we're not connecting to it. We're just going through. Oh yeah, we're supposed to. We're supposed to eat, right? We go and eat, but we don't. But we don't remember that we're supposed to make blessings, or we don't remember that the concept of eating is supposed to remind ourselves that we could connect to God through a physical pleasure, right? And then everything in life's like that. So at least today, let's try to focus on that. Let's try to realize that this is a day to prepare ourselves for tomorrow, for tonight, right? Kol Nidre, 7:13 in Eitz Chaim, or wherever you may be, right? Don't forget that, right? Don't forget that we're doing this to connect ourselves. And let's not forget that we have to, in sync, right? It's not like a tug of war, our physical body and our spiritual soul. There is a tug of war. Tug of war is, right? The physical body wants there to be no spiritual component in our physical actions. But what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to make no tug of war. We're supposed to combine the two. The only way to combine the two is by realizing that our spiritual could intertwine with our physical, and we could elevate our physical through our spiritual. And yes, the spiritual is to be the dominating one, but it's to be the one that's elevating the physical. But if we're dominating our physical, it's not going to do anything to our spiritual. On the contrary, our spiritual is going to constantly decline. So the only way to truly intertwine the two is by recognizing that our spiritual has the power to go ahead and elevate our physical, right? And that's what we're supposed to be thinking about during these days. So I wish everybody a Gemar Chasima Tova, right? I wish everybody a good and easy and meaningful fast, right? A fast where we could recognize the purpose of it, not just, to get a bad coffee headache, right? But actually a fast where we realize that, the materialistic world is not all it, but materialistic world is the way to connect to God in this physical world by elevating it, right? And a Yom Kippur of meaning, a Yom Kippur where we are able to connect and a Yom Kippur that, God willing, will not be the end of our inspiration during this high holiday season, but on the contrary, we'll give it a jump start, give it a boost to be able to take it, as we say, Allah, right? To take it, continue it through the year, to be able to continue to grow and to transform ourselves. Thank you all for joining us. Just a quick reminder, Kol Nidre tonight is at 7:13 in Eitz Chaim. There will be explanatory classes tonight after the rabbi's speech, after Kol Nidre. Please join me for that. There'll be also tomorrow around 11:30. There'll be probably a little bit after Yiskar. Join us for that also. And Rabbi Chin Shocher will be giving a class around 5:45. So please join us if you can, but please make sure that you utilize the day and not just sit around and not think about it, or try to take on a little more and realize that we have to connect on a deeper level on this very spiritual day. Thank you all for joining us.